Hi, my name is Lawrence Osler and I'm a sports writer for The Independent. The Independent has asked for your questions on the Tour de France, so let's take a look at what you've asked. First question, PJ Whitman asks, has the Tour de France got cleaner? It's definitely got cleaner since the days of Lance Armstrong and Marco Pantini in the late 90s and early 2000s, when blood transfusions were just as routine as having dinner after a race. To say it's clean and completely clean would probably be naive, and the honest answer is that we don't know. I think these days the challenge for the authorities of the sport is the grey areas, TUEs, medical exemptions, how riders use those for things like asthma, which is particularly prevalent in the peloton these days. So the boundaries are being blurred between what is acceptable and what is not, and I think those are the most difficult challenges going forward for the sport. Is this Tour de France going to be completely clean? Again, the honest answer is we don't know. Miles says, I'm an old romantic, so should I go all in on Cav getting his record 35th stage? Mark Cavendish is going to attempt to win the 35th Tour de France stage of his career, which would surpass Eddy Merckx's mark of 34, Belgium legend. It would be an amazing thing if he could do it, and it would be a fantastic fitting end to Mark Cavendish's career. Logically, you might say no. He's right at the end of his career now. I think he's 37 years old coming into this, which will be his final Tour de France. He's up against really strong pool of sprinters like Fabio Jakobsen, Jasper Philipsen. He's also up against all-rounders who can win sprint stages as well, the likes of Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel. So logic might say no. It's also a really, really challenging mountainous Tour de France, particularly this parkour, which will make it very difficult for some of the sprinters like Mark Cavendish to get to Paris and get to that final stage of the Champs-Élysées where he's won 4 times in the past. So just getting to the end of the race will be really difficult. However, I like Miles it would be a sort of real romantic thing if Mark Cavendish could do it. And so, yes, let's back him. I think he can make it. Miles has a second Cavendish question. Is Cav the greatest cyclist ever? I think that might be a bit of a stretch. Eddy Merckx is generally considered the greatest cyclist of all time. Bernardino also would be right up there. They're more well-rounded. They've obviously won the Tour de France multiple times. Eddy Merckx won the Giro d'Italia 5 times as well. Cavendish could definitely be considered and probably is the greatest sprinter of all time. And so I think whatever happens, whether he wins his 35th or not, he will probably be remembered as that at the end of his career. Steve says MVDP or WVA. So Mathieu van der Poel or Wout van Aert. 2 outstanding riders, both incredible all-rounders. They can win sprint stages, they can win hilly, punchy stages. We haven't really seen them properly go head-to-head at the Tour de France, both at their peak, and this is one of the most exciting subplots of this particular Tour de France. Van der Poel last year was disappointingly burnt out by the time he got to the Tour, but this time he's taken his season really steady. He's been in incredible form, took a couple of months off, came back recently, won the Tour of Belgium, I think, in amazing form. Wout van Aert actually was pipped by Van der Poel in the Cyclocross World Championships. So it's an amazing duel. They've sort of disliked each other and hated each other and mellowed, and I think now the relationship is a little bit more calm. It's going to be a great battle. If I had to pick one to win more stages than the other, I think it would be Van der Poel, just because of the form he is in. Can't wait to watch and find out. Benji asks, is 2023 the furthest Ineos Grenadiers have been from a chance to win the Tour de France since 2011? Ineos Grenadiers previously were Team Sky, had an incredibly successful decade, more than a decade now, since Bradley Wiggins first won his Tour de France, Chris Froome, Geraint Thomas, Egan Bernal, so many winners, so much success. This year, I'd have to agree with Benji. They probably are as far as they have ever been in that period from winning the Tour, not only because they have a slightly weaker roster, so Egan Bernal is going to be riding, but He's clearly not 100% fit after a horrible crash last year. But also, the strength of their opponents is just as high as it's ever been. Tadej Pogacar is incredible, and he has an even stronger team around him this year. Jumbo-Visma are just an absolute juggernaut of a team, with Jonas Vingegaard favourite to win the Tour. So Ineos almost certainly won't win it unless something extraordinary happens. I think that can be really exciting, though. I think it can throw open the opportunity to focus on stage wins, perhaps even grabbing the yellow jersey. And I'm really excited to see Tom Pidcock sort of let off the leash and given the chance to go and win more stages like he did last year on Alpe d'Huez. George says, a thought after the Dauphiné. Jumbo-Visma were able to topple the indomitable Tadej Pogacar at last year's Tour by pulling a 1-2 sucker punch with Roglic and Vingegaard. Could UAE Team Emirates, the underdogs this time, do the same with Pogacar and Adam Yates? That is a good question. I think last year was quite a specific set of circumstances where Pogacar he was the reigning champion, but he didn't have necessarily a very strong team around him, and that made him a little bit vulnerable. And therefore, Jumbo-Visma very skillfully were able to exploit and isolate him and use their two sort of equal leaders to knock chunks out of him in many ways. And that was very effective, and obviously Jonas Vingegaard went on to win the race. This time, I don't know if Pogacar and Adam Yates can necessarily reverse that, because Jumbo-Visma are such a strong team that Vingegaard will almost never be isolated in that same way. So I think it will be a different type of race, but certainly the addition of Adam Yates, who is in great form, to help Pogacar will make for a much more even contest in the mountains. Thank you for your questions about the Tour de France. You can watch more episodes of You Ask the Questions on Independent TV.